I did not realize, that it is the lectures continue. So I believe what is the time that I have?
You have all the time.
Next
you
one
need.
is when?
You have basically 1 hour.
Okay. So we'll finish it in 1 hour. The thing that I want to talk about is something about how and when I began to know about Ahmedabad. I landed in Ahmedabad in 58 years ago, 1955. And my first office was next to Tila Baja, in a place called Valentine Avenue. Panko Naka was nearby, Jama Masjid was close by, Bhadra and Manek Chowk were all across. And every day you cross, and I was on the second, third floor. Then times changed slowly, and I moved in the 60s in Dhan House, which is just behind Bank of India, right across Premabai Hall. And that was the time Premabai Hall was active. The old building was still there. And there were theatre and other things were happening, apart from literature, etc. Gujarat Vidya Sabha was located there. And with this kind of a thing, my daily activity was to go and also go to the movies and walk into the streets, go to the markets, go nearby houses, go to other halls. And therefore, every time I went there, I discovered many things. I discovered that the city, which is dense compared to the west side, because I was then eventually living in west side, going back every morning, spending the day. And to me it was a big balance, change of contradiction. Sparse, open, scattered. And of course that time the crowd was not as much. But still, it was a very different world, and when you go back to the city, it was another world, less crowded than what it is today. Because today it is all full of encroachments. So this is the way I knew Bhadra, because it was always around Bhadra that life happened. In 58, I got the commission to design Premabai Hall from Kasturbai Lalbhai and for Gujarat Vidya Sabha. And that was my first encounter with Ahmedabad. So when I was there, and today when you see this density always remained like this. This one has now expanded far beyond. And all the new buildings, which were done by Corbusier and others. So when Corbusier came here, Khan came here, visitors came here, this was the place which was always the tourist spot. We measured houses, we measured open spaces, we measured streets, we went through the mosques. And we were wondering about the scales and the kind of changes that were there. And I think when we talk about heritage, I think these are the qualities which are very, very significant. How lifestyle and culture and activities and habitat are woven together as one fabric. And I think that has still stayed with me. And when I got this commission, I was wondering what is to be done in this area. 58 I did the project, so next. So when the project came, before that I was looking at the map. This is the fort. You can't believe that this was supposed to be Manek Chowk. Right up to Manek Chowk, this was a garden city. This is the river. This is the palace, the court, the fort and the palace. These were all open spaces, and these are the mosques, This is our Jama Masjid. So everything was open, huge area here. But slowly, if you see on that map, go to the next. Next. Slowly, if you look at this fort here, and if you look at this place, this is the mosque, courtyard. This was all open. Like this, and more or less like this. Of course, there were patches of gardens. All that is gone. So slowly all this came up. There is a mosque here. So this is the main place, this is the fort, this is Premabai Hall, and then this is the mosque here. But this was all, so what happens is, how does one really look at this and what are the things that one can do? So when the municipal corporation, Mr. Gautam, then the commissioner, took the advantage of JN and RUF urban renewal schemes. And he found out that this is a good way to propose. And I think that was the most significant step that happened in Ahmedabad. Not only that he widened the roads, some of the roads, he started to clean up the place, but he says, let us do this area from Teen Darwaja to this place. Manik Chowk is here. So, and then the Lal Darwaja bus stop, and then right up to the river from Sabarmati was started. So all these areas were becoming a part of the axis of this old city, which you see here. In this map you can see these streets. Actually, if we want to get back to Ahmedabad, we should get back to these streets and this place. If we can manage to improve this area properly, we would really have a unique place, in the world. I'll tell you why. Next. So sorry, go back. So when we talk about this, when you look at the books, in 58 I did a project, and then 75 we built the Brahma Bay Hall. In between there were many stages that I worked on the project. But I discovered in the literature that there was also one fountain here. But today there is a police office here, and then there is the UCO Bank on this area. So these two buildings were built. So while I was here, I was just here. This was my office here. So I would walk around, go to these places and go. I discovered that under the UCO Bank there is an arch building, and ancient building perhaps, I don't know how old it is, but there is a building with arches, and that has become their storage space. So that means there were some heritages. And recently, when they broke this building, which was extended later on, they have found those, you must have read in the newspapers, that there are plinths, which you find here, the rooms below. So this is something which is very unique, that there are still, even here we found some objects below the ground. So that means that this site was perhaps occupied for many reasons over time. So while one was working on this, when I was working on this, we started working between this connection, and then eventually one should really come right up to Manik Chowk and all these areas. Manik Chowk is here. So all these areas we must use so that eventually the heritage cycle gets completed and we should work. As far as Bhadra is concerned, municipality asked us to do the work here, and what we started doing was, we said if this is the area, what must be the comparative size of this place? Next. So strange enough, if you take this plan, and if you take the plan of Venice Piazza San Marco, their areas are the same, 18,000, 19,000. Length, this is Piazza San Marco. The dotted line is this. So what we are talking about is something extremely significant. So nowhere you will find such a plaza which is known, of course. This one is surrounded by buildings. Then you have here the Grand Canal, you have the Dosh Palace. So all these things are there, of course, with the capital, San Marco Church. But all this, but still, I think the size and the scale for us is unique, and there are not many places like this in India, in one place. So imagine what must be there during the Mughal time, which I showed you in the beginning, because all this, up to here, this was the garden, up to here. Now imagine this garden, there is a mosque here. So all that garden has gone away, but we can't do much about it because this is going to stay. So issue was, how does one do this at least and revive this area? So our task was to revive this area, and what we did was we started adding these areas extra towards the entry, and this is really what we are doing presently for the last 2.5 years. So the area which is colored is what we are doing. Now in this, there are 3-4 areas. The projects are the old fort, the palace, and then there are these temples, there is this mosque here, there is a police headquarters here, and here was actually the UCO Bank and this is also the police office which was being used. Current police station is actually what they call here. So all these things are not there as there. So one has to find out what do we do, what kind of a thing we have to do. Incidentally, if in the last few years, when I came, there were no hawkers here, but the streets were always occupied. Sundays also there will be a lot of people coming. This is the center of the city. Over time now, and since the Jain and Aryan, the hawkers which were here on the side, for example, all these shops are extremely active, and I think market-wise this is one of the cheapest areas to have shopping area. So they have hawkers added, and in the open area also you will see a lot of hawkers, and Sunday you can't walk there at all. And here there are these two buildings. At the moment we have demolished this building will be demolished soon, and then we will have the whole view right through. Bhadra has also here one temple, Bhadra Kali temple, which is very famous. It was there, they say, before Ahmad Shah Begla came. And that is why that idol was there, and then they gave that space to them. There is only one room given. Eventually they have occupied little more area. This building has been occupied by the fort. So these buildings are now used for different, but luckily the facade, the structure, and all these things are still the same. And I think that is important, that those areas are stayed. And then when this old Premabai Hall was there, along with Premabai Hall is actually a site and center of Gujarat Vidya Sabha, 170-year-old institute, which is talking about Gujarat culture, literature, and Sanskriti, culture. So Gujarat's cultural center was here. Along with that, there was this Hemabai Institute. So these two institutions came almost the same time, and therefore these people, when they must have come and occupied, must be the idea that here is a place which is going to be the center. And I think that center will come back again. So this center, along with religion, so actually this project is complex because you have here a Islamic monument, you have here crowded area, public space, you have hawkers here, you have all these shops, here. So there are Muslim house restaurants and other open spaces. The police chowk is in the middle. Then you find that there are some offices, but mostly crowded area. And so therefore, basically, the crowd has to be seen, the shops have to be seen, and these are all people who have business around the clock. Every season you can use Tajia and Ganeshotsav and all that. They come from this route, come like this, go back. And they can go back like this. So all these things have to be taken into account because that is going to be there, and we should not keep it only a pristine place, but it should be alive, lively, and people must use. So while this Brahmabai Hall was done, there is a nice statue here of Rantola, the person who made the first. So here the Karanj police, there is a fountain here. So they had thought about this axis, they had thought about this axis, and they had thought about these places around this place. So I think one was looking at how does one look at the relationships of buildings, how does one look at the activities that are there, and how do you really accommodate so that during the daytime, as you see abroad, this must become a place which is totally pedestrian. But of course, goods have to come, so there are gates to be provided. We will have gates here, so pedestrians can come, but also in the morning, etc., you will be able to go with access, vehicular access, and emergency fire brigade. So all these access have to be there, but otherwise, it should be daily use. So anyway, the access has to be there. So this is how we have to do. While we were doing this, we began to think about how does it relate to other places and other monuments next. So you see, this is the original plan. Now when one does as an architect, one has to look at the genesis of this. So this is where the Jama Masjid is. This is how the whole connection is. So you begin to look at this area, these Maidans, then you look at these connections, then you look at the kind of thing that has happened, and then the question is, how do we eventually relate and bring back this? You can't bring this now anymore, but we can always find that there is a hint of this and direction. Next. Other thing was, when we see this Teen Darwaja and this distance, it is the same distance of Taj Mahal. So you can imagine the scale. Once it is open, you will be able to see what it is like. You can see really the widths and all that. So if you really put the drawing on top here, you get this. So there are a couple of things here. Complexity of the place, characteristics of different activities, seasonal activities, then activities depending upon religion, activities depending upon the kind of what you call climate, and other activities which come because of culture and cultural activity that can happen. So all this we were talking about, and so let's see next. So when we did this, we found these photographs, and you can see how this is the gate, this is the Bhadra area, this is the fort. The Brahma Hall is on this side, this is the Himambai Institute there on the other side. So these are the kind of processions that took place. Next. During independence, pre-independence, these are the kind of things happened. So it was, we have to bring back this character somehow. Look at the kind of building which were there. So lucky, if what has happened compared to European and other places is, these are all added over time, and they were really for small shops, etc. So when you survey them, those buildings really are neglected buildings. They have a very roaring business, but the business is of common people, clothing, basically clothing, shoes, etc. But if you want to buy cheap things, you go there, otherwise you go to CG Road. But that's not really what it is. Eventually, when things change, all this will change. So the question is, how much can you change? How much you keep the character? And how do you do that so that still it becomes lively? The most important part here is, how do you keep the quality of that vibrational life. And I think this is important. Next. So first time when I did the scheme, I was looking at the fort and I said I will make a floating building. This was in 1958. And I consulted a Japanese engineer, and I went to Japan, we did the structure, and the drawings were all made, but then somehow we dropped it at that time. Next. So it was like this, the Brahma Hall. It was in 1958. Next. For 1,000 people capacity, etc. Next. And then in 75, when we built new Brahma Hall, this started then. Since 58, the job continued dormantly, slowly. But by 70s, Kasturbai says, somehow you must get it and build it. He donated the money. So with that donation, we had to build a hall. So we finally made a plan there with an idea that if this plaza is there, we have to find a way that the auditorium must respond to this plaza. And the plaza must become part and parcel of this, as well as the wall here of the ancient monument. So this was really the concern. But then the traffic continued. So we had to work out traffic system, because that cannot be changed. Originally, all the taxi stand was here. So anybody who wanted any taxi or transport, they would have to go to Bhadra. So Bhadra was every occasion a central place. Then this mosque is here. So you see, heritage-wise, it's a place full of heritage sites. Next. So when we did this, I was thinking of removing this and create this. And today, luckily, this has happened. Next. So while we were doing this open space, we had to also look at the traffic. So that time I had proposed that the car would come next to ground or go below ground. There will be parking here, and then there will be an access on the side here, you see, and you could come out and go. So I was trying to divert, holding the mosque here and then keeping the space, but even then we were trying to do this shopping, adding the shopping areas so that you could have informal and formal place to sit down, have coffee, etc. So there can be 1-story, 2-story, 3-story building of small scale. I think the important thing of Bhadra is the scale of the buildings there. They are really small. And those small scale, I think, is extremely significant. So if one was then talking about giving it to somebody, somebody would come and buy the whole thing and make this into a mall, I think the character would not be the same. And I think this is important for us to remember that this heritage is meant with smaller scales. I think important thing in Ahmedabad has been that the Ahmedabad's Majur Mahajan, Ahmedabad's City Mahajan, that is the Vepari Mandal, I think all these have been extremely active. The textile industry and other industry which came, they made citizens the shareholders. So the entire culture is based on cooperation and participation. And I think that participation has to continue. So the question here would be, how do we really relate these together? So when we were doing this Brahmavi Hall, we said we will allow this open space to become part of this area. So it should be really below, when you come to the ground, it should be public place. Next. So this was the initial scheme. So access was maintained like this. Next. Then subsequently for many years this continued, the hall was being used, but theatre, etc., mostly theatre. Eventually the municipal tax structure and the kind of money that the return revenue that was coming, it was not possible. So after almost now 30 years, that is after 20 years of some losses, the hall was abandoned. And the hall was completely closed. The population here was so crowded, etc. They would come inside, break the chairs, tear the canvas, and lift all the toilet equipment, bathroom, etc. So if you go there, it was vandalized totally. What was supposed to be a center, it did not happen. Luckily now, that municipality has agreed to buy it over, and we are going to revive it again, and it will be back to normal place. So what we are saying is, when that time looking at the plaza, I had done this platform here at height. Incidentally, this platform level of this, level of Sindhi Sayyid Mosque is the same. So what we could think about is, in my proposal that I had made that time was, at that level there should be a pedestrian walk right through Lal Darwaja garden, etc. And in that you have below shopping, then you have an open space with restaurants and other activities, and above that is housing and commerce, etc., and offices. So this was a scheme in the 70s. So these kind of things perhaps may happen again, without touching anything but connecting the monuments and creating pedestrian areas as well as the public activity. Next. So today, what has happened is, this is the fort which I will talk about later on. What we had to do was, this hall will be eventually become a participation, of total participation. There is a police station here, this mosque is here, the Bank of India. I started my offices here, old office was here, and I started working. Convene, they did this building long back. Today, all these buildings are being painted and changed, but otherwise, these are the places which are very, very important historically. Incidentally, Convene, they did a building which nobody talks about, was in 1955, he did Atira building, after he came back from Harvard. So, when we talk of heritage, we have to also go back to 40, 50 years and see which are the most significant buildings which began to change Ahmedabad. There was a phase in 60s and 50s, a lot of institutions came. IIM and other institutions happened. So all those things are now part of the heritage. So I think one of the things that we have to look at is, heritage is really where the culture is growing and culture is reviving. And therefore, it is not only that only the old city is heritage, there are innumerable places. There are some British missionary and other schools, other buildings. So there are so many buildings outside the walls, which if we link, then we really can get a great place all around. Because what is happening today is, because of the land price and the development, all those buildings are going away, they are being bought over, and instead, including in the old city itself, including near the market, if you go to Manek Chowk area and others, a lot of buildings are getting demolished. So I think when we talk of heritage, we have to really see how we can conserve, update them, and see that they are recycled. We can recycle them, we can get the revenue, it will be better. So here, we had to do this Karanj Bagh because it was dilapidated, there was a wall there was a fence. If you have to make it public, it should really be used by everybody. And then these are the things, where the hawkers can be. So purpose was to do this. In then archaeology department has agreed to do this fort. The fort they will remove from there. So this will become museum, restaurant, bookshop, guest house, all kinds of activities will happen in this area also. So if this happened, this would happen at night and daytime, then this will be a livable place. It will become really a city center. Next. Next. These are the statements. Go ahead. So now today you can see. This is earlier times. This is not a Sunday. This is Karanj Bagh. Next. So if you look at it now, Mr. Nair can tell you better. So also here these are all heritage sites. 100 meters. So if you look at it, it's full of heritage sites. And I think if we can look at it, then we should see how to conserve this building. I think now there is a law, therefore you can't change this, but you can't even touch these buildings. So I think if that happened, we have to also look at it, how do we make them work and do something more productive so that it can be earned. For example, in Hyderabad, when we were doing the Charminar area, we found out that day life, night life, tourist life, local citizens' life, I think all this is dependent upon the kind of things that we exchange. Whether you buy, you sell, you prepare, or you cook. And therefore, all this, when we go abroad, we go to these cities, and actually those cities are all old, but there is a continuous activity. So those activities have to happen, and therefore we should find out what can happen in all these areas, so that then only we can say that everything is working, because these are all very beautiful. Eventually all this is going to go away. Recently the relief cinema was sold on this corner. So if that goes away and you get a multi-storied building, so these are the things which are happening. I'm saying, because we are talking about the heritage conservation, we should look at beyond the wall also, and within the wall also, what are the things that we can seek and conserve. Next. So these were the images. So that temple which is here, we thought people gather there, they have garbas and others, but mostly the people who come here every day, it's a huge crowd here. On Sundays they give fresh food and whatnot. So we thought we will create that. There was a platform built recently. We thought we should make a proper platform with sitting places so that it can be used gracefully. They also have a place here for our. So this Bhadra temple gets at least a position. So the idea of conservation is, when we do revitalization, how do we strengthen characteristics of the places which are significant, so that when you walk through them, you know that this is something. So you walk on a place, you walk on a regular level, you walk on a slightly higher level, or you have a place to sit down, or you have a place to transact any small or big business. All these things have to do. So this is the platform which has been built now. A lot of work has happened here, because the other area between UCO Bank and Team Darwaja is still not in our possession. So every time the work had to be done, you cordon an area, not allow the traffic can go by sideways, and then that much work can happen. That is why it has taken a long time. So then this Bhadra area becomes completely open. This is all made of granite floor. Next. And then near the Teen Darwaja, we must make these hawkers properly. We renovate the buildings, give them guidelines, so that eventually all this, we don't change the levels of the building, we don't change character, we just suggest within the area, there are old elements there. When we talk of heritage, we discover the elements which are characteristic. For example, those doors, shutters, panels, level, brackets. So if we find those and if you can find similarities, then we can work in today's ways, today's manners and execute them. So this is what we were proposing here based on their actual. We have not changed any heights or anything here. But teen darwaja, so this is how the granite and the flooring would be. There is a fountain made here and these are the kind of portals, for lights, and then the hawkers can be contained here, but this will always remain open. All the trees, wherever they are there, we not only conserve them, but we have added other trees in some areas, so people can sit there. The whole idea is, apart from business, I think people must have place to go there and sit down. So we have a place, something like for several hundred people to sit in the plaza. So there is no question of saying that the plaza is empty or like this. So at night, daytime, holidays, and on big business days or festivals. Next. This is how Karanj Bagh was. So you can see how you have to cordon. This was the platform. Next. So this is how the platform will become here. This is how the Karanj Bagh is. And that UCO Bank, once UCO Bank has gone, the other building goes away, then your vista will become like that. You can see the scale now you get. And all these buildings, they're slightly given scope to improve their facades. Eventually, these buildings are going to change their functions. They will become slightly upmarket. They will also have a lot more things to happen. I met somebody, a developer who was working on this site. He says, you give me what you will do here, I will buy this whole package. So actually, you can imagine immediate mindset. One is talking about packaging things quickly and having ownership, which is then, because you must look at employment in India. I think opportunity to earn money. You must also look at those hawkers who come with almost nothing. And I think those are the people we have to find a way to provide for. So these are the kind of things that have to be done. Second thing is, when we do this, you need an emergency traffic, you need a service road, you also need here fire brigade, and then you need people who come here and they want to come here on this side or here. You need battery operated cars so that they can be taken. So you need several stations and that should happen. So what we have done is we have marked here, you can see the change of, this is actual photograph. So this is a drawing, but photograph you will see also this. This is the line where the cars, etc. service moves here. This is the place we removed those walls and we made this, edge, which is, this is all in granite, which you will see some photographs. We changed the landscape here, heightened the trees, kept this, of course, the statues. But whatever was there before, it is all preserved. We will replace that UCO Bank with this, and below we will set up a museum, archaeological or special museum there. Ramabai Hall will also get a little plinth there, so this also will be revived. Then on this side, the police station is there, we provide some sitting area, and all these areas we have added. So slowly, all this will happen. So when we finish this, we will get activities. Next. Today, it is like this, you can see now. This is the platform here. Next. This is how it is supposed to be. This was there marble there already. So we had to replace it, by a clean marble, etc. Next. So this is how today it is built, but immediately this is occupied. You see, all this has happened. So you can't do anything suddenly overnight. There was a case recently, we had made a building proposal, we started lining there, and the mosque people came and they said, it is not going to happen, we can't do this, we use it. It was never used. Next morning there was a board of ownership. So it's not easy, but it is a challenging job, but an exciting job. Next. This is how it is built today. This is how we have got it. Every time you change and add gardens, then you have to provide facilities. You need to change the police station, you have to give them better facilities, you need to have public toilets, you need to have emergency areas. All these have to provide, so we provide them as much as possible. Next. This is actual. Next. You can see this one is there, so we have to give prominent place. The fountain has to be revived. I mean, then this is how it is done now. So what has happened? Do you know that this is the first time one has to think about defensive architecture? Because you go there and they can sell on the wheel, but they can sell also on the floor. And if you have this little parapet there, they can sell there. So you have to incline it so that they can't sleep. You can sit there for only short while, etc. So everything had to be done in such a way that it is workable, defensive, and yet it serves its purpose. Next. So this is how today you see this paving. Inside the garden we have made a different kind of paving, like rubble stones. And then these benches are made around the trees. All these are benches. These are all benches there. Here. Next. So you can see. Next. And police is there, so they can use this place. So it has become really a good place for people. So you ask them. I tried to make benches. Then I thought I'll make a narrow one and narrow like this. Then when I suggested to those people, they say, what are you talking? It can be sleep. I can show you how to sleep. So really it has been a good training to know really how does one do something. It's a mind you have to think about. Next. So this is how we made. Other thing we did was we used all through granite floor. The reason is it will not catch dirt, oil, stains. Second, it should look like it was built during the old times. And third, it should more or less match with the old monuments so that it doesn't look very different. Next. You can see the slope. Next. Next. See when they finished, this will be finished like this. There is water on this, but otherwise a polished granite. So really the idea was it should last long. It should not be temporarily made. See this, all this is done, paved. So you can imagine this place, huge place. Next. Then the next question is, we have talked to archaeological people, it's their job. All these stones, similar stones will be on the building which are next or joining, so that the entire will look like it was built long ago. Next. So this will not look white anymore. The temple is here. Next. This was the earlier drawing. This is that fountain. Next. This is the new excavation that they found. And these are the gates. Actually, it's a very beautiful area there to walk around. Beautiful scale, very nice building, and scale is very beautiful. I think once this is finished, we will be able to really walk through this. So I think I hope that this will be open for public so that really people can go in and look at not only the museum only, but the city and the whole place across. Next. There is that clock. Next. Then the next question is, how do you stop encroachments? So we provide here gates and pollards